So today we'll be installing a K&N Fuel Filter. These are high quality filters, all metal construction, high flow rates, and they do a great job at capturing dirt, rust, any foreign material rolling around in your fuel tank. It does a great job at capturing. Now, one thing to note, we are working on a fuel injected vehicle, and we will be replacing the fuel hosing as well. With that being said, let's jump over to the vehicle. We'll remove the old fuel filter, install the new one, check for leaks, and we'll be in good shape. First step is we need to release the fuel pressure in the electronic fuel system. Now, if you don't do this, what would happen is once you remove that fuel filter, the fuel system is under high pressure. So once you remove that fuel filter, you're going to squirt, or you'll get fuel all over the place. So you want to release the pressure. So to do that, find the correct fuse for the fuel pump. Now, if you take a look at the bottom here, this was just attached. And on the flip side, you see all of the fuses and what they're doing or what they're meant there for. So right here, 15 amp fuel pump. So if we match that up, that happens to be this guy right here. So again, if you want to see that, just so you can sort of learn on how to read one of these, as you can see, just matching everything up, you have two blanks right here, and then you have a 10 amp, a 7.5 amp, and a 10 amp. So the fuel pump guy is right there. Okay, so I'm going to grab this little tool, slip it over, pull it out, and that's it. So now what's going to happen, let me grab my keys here. Oh boy. There we go. So we'll start the car, or we'll attempt to start the car, and this will release all of the fuel, or at least the pressure in the fuel system. And there you go. And that's it. So now we can go ahead and tackle by removing that fuel filter. Now the fuel filter lives right here on this vehicle. Now just by looking at this, you have a clamp right here, another one right here. This obviously comes from the fuel filter to the motor, and then underneath the fuel filter you have the fuel lines underneath the car. So there's a fuel line down there, a metal fuel line, and then the rubber hose goes to the fuel filter. I think in this case, because this working area is very, very limited, I'm just going to remove this guy right here, pull it off, and then let me see if I can get this for you guys. It's very, very dark in here with the light on, but let me see. Here we go. You have a bottom hose right there, and right there is the clamp. So I'm going to remove that clamp, and then just remove the whole filter with the hosing as one unit. And of course, whenever you do this kind of job, make sure you put a drain pan underneath the vehicle to grab any fuel that's going to spill. Okay, that's enough. Let me grab the bottom bracket. Now, fortunately, the lighting isn't very good. You can't really see this clamp. But once I pull it out, you'll see exactly what it looks like here. Okay, so both clamps are loose. Let's start by removing. Get a rag here. Catch this fuel. Fuel always spills, unfortunately. There we go. As you can see, not too much, which is always good. Try to leave this up so it doesn't leak. And there's a little bracket to hold this on. Push this out. Okay. Try to leave this up. And then we're just going to pull this right off the vehicle here. There we go. Again, don't forget that drain pan on the bottom, because obviously you don't want this fuel to get everywhere. Now with the fuel filter removed, this gives you a clearer picture on where I was working. So right down there is the metal fuel line. Just loosen up the clamp. You don't have to remove the clamp, just loosen it up so you can slide the hose off. And then I was able to remove the entire unit with the hosing, everything together. So now we have the old unit and comparing it with the new unit. They're pretty much both the same. The big plus with K&N, they use all metal construction. As you can see here, we have plastic on the end. But just check your owner's manual on how often you need to change the fuel filter. Because it may be 60,000 miles, it may be beyond that, but just check the owner's manual, because if the fuel filter starts to clog up, your car just won't run correctly. You'll drive yourself crazy checking every little component where it could just be the fuel filter. So just change it at the recommended interval, and you're just crossing out one problem that you need to go over if something does arise. So that being said, let's jump over to the vehicle. Also, if you're curious on the old hosing, not too bad. As you can see, it's just scored up where the hose clamps were, but nevertheless, just make sure you install new hosing. We'll cut it to length and install it on the vehicle. And when it comes time to tightening down these hose clamps, you don't have to over tighten them. Just give them a good snug, and they're not going anywhere. You'll be perfectly fine. But one thing to note, we happen to be working on a Nissan. If you take a look at the factory Nissan clamp and compare it to the type of clamp you find over the counter, I prefer the Nissan clamps just because completely surrounded 360 degrees around the clamp, it's perfectly enclosed as opposed to these openings. And what happens over time, if you take a look at the old hosing here, it starts to eat into the hosing, and you won't get that with these Nissan clamps. So if you do plan on doing this maintenance item on your vehicle, just take a quick glance, see what kind of clamps you have on your fuel filter. If you have these aftermarket or over-the-counter types, just give yourself a little extra time when you order the fuel filter, or when you plan on doing the maintenance item. Maybe order some extra factory hose clamps, because these over time will be a lot more delicate, let's say, to the fuel hose as opposed to these over-the-counter hose clamps. Before reinstalling the new fuel filter, just take note of the flow rate. This is the flow rate. In other words, this is the fuel coming from the fuel tank. You want the fuel to be filtered before it enters the motor. So this is the correct way in this case. This end will go toward the fuel line underneath the vehicle. So just take note of that. Again, if you're not sure, when you remove the old filter, just take note of the flow rate if you're nervous or you're not too sure exactly on how to check that. So let's go ahead and reinstall it. So this is essentially what it looks like before we hook up the fuel line. As you can see, this guy will go right there, and on the bottom it's really difficult for you guys to see this, but I'm not even going to attempt it. But right at the bottom, we're going to hook that up to the metal line, clamp it down, start the car, and we'll be in good shape. So now the fuel filter is reinstalled. Unfortunately, it's just too tough to record and tying down these clamps, especially the bottom one. At the same time, it's just too cramped. But nevertheless, you get the idea. Just do the reverse process when you remove the filter. So let's go ahead and crank up the car. We have to reinstall the fuse for the fuel pump, start the vehicle, make sure we have no leaks. So just reinstall the fuse here, like so. Just make sure it's in the right position, which it is. Okay, let's go ahead and start the vehicle. And as the vehicle is running, just check for leaks. In this case, we're in very good shape. I don't see anything, I don't smell anything. So this wraps up the installation. Any questions, just leave it in the comments post below. And until next time, thank you for watching.